And so here's like a cover-up gang tattoo.
Right.
Wow.
And it's, you know, God will use you. You just have to ask. I said very clearly when I prayed, I said, you know, I will do whatever you want me to do. I've lived my way and failed miserably. I will do whatever you tell me to do. You want me to go to Haiti? You want me to feed the homeless? What do you want me to do? And so we started covering gang tattoos for free. And what I thought was going to be a nice little ministry, 4 or 5 a month, you know, the word got out quickly.
How? How did that happen?
I was speaking about it at church, at my church at the time, and you know, people would share it and say, hey, we've got this guy, he's doing this really out of the box kind of ministry. You guys should talk to him. And I'd speak at other churches or men's groups or women's groups, and the word kind of filtered out, and then some local media picked up on it and ran some stories, and people really got behind it and said, this is really cool. This is something that's really needed. Cook County used to have a tattoo removal program, but the minute the budget kind of started going crazy,
really?
They cut it. Yeah.
Because is it like against the law or
No,
something?
no, not at all. It's just, it's expensive to do, you know, laser tattoo removal.
Okay,
So.
no, but I mean, I thought having a gang tattoo, because you said they had.
They offered it. It was a social service that
Oh,
they
it was
had.
a social service. Okay.
Yeah, it's not illegal to have the gang tattoos, but I'll tell you, it makes life very difficult.
Right.
For a few reasons. You know, we want these folks to be able to go out and get a job to support
Right,
themselves and their
right, right.
families. Gang tattoos are typically in high visibility areas,
Yeah.
the hands, the neck, or even the face,
Yeah.
with teardrops and such. And we want them to be able to go out and get a job. Another is, you know, I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement, and I have, you know, a lot of folks I've met through that are part of gangs or were part of gangs that, you know, they conflict. So if a police officer pulls over somebody and they're covered in gang tattoos, of course the guy in the driver's seat's going to say, well, I gave that life up. I'm not that person anymore. Well, how's the officer going to know?
Right.
So their heart rate goes to the roof, their hand goes to the pistol, and they don't know what they're getting into. And the other is for the person with the gang tattoo for their protection, because they come up against somebody that's you know, from a rival gang. They're not going to know, and they're just going to see it, and they're going to have a problem. And even from people who are former friends in the same gang, if they see them and knowing that they're no longer with the gang but they still have the tattoo, they face danger in that way.
Right. So how difficult is it to remove, and how long is the process?
It takes 2 to 3 sessions. We use a white light removal tool in combination with a magnet. It's called a neo-mag light. It's non-laser, but what happens is the combination of the light hitting it with the magnet at the same time breaks apart the iron oxide molecules that are made up of tattoo ink.
Is it harmful at all?
No, it doesn't burn, it doesn't scar. You feel the molecules breaking down as you're doing the procedure. I did some on myself when we got the device initially, but you know, most of the time they just want it gone. And once they feel it, you know, it's about, pain-wise, it's not painless.
Right.
It's about the same as getting a tattoo.
Okay, so so this is like word of mouth.
Yeah.
People just contact you, and you do this free.
Free of charge.
Oh my goodness! So how many clients have you served? Would you say so far?
Well, we just finished our first year in this past October, and we stopped counting after that. But we did over 500. We did 508 the first year.
Oh my goodness!
And it was a combination of removals and cover-ups. So you cover the old tattoo with a new design, something that's more aesthetically pleasing.
Right. And were most of those gang tattoos?
The vast majority of those were gang tattoos.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does what you do connect to human trafficking? Because I know that there's some of that too.
Yeah, about 9 months ago, a friend, Agent Brian Smith, he's with the Department of Homeland Security, we were going to church together, and he invited me to come speak to their gang unit, and said, of course, I'd love to network and offer my services. And he called me as I was driving up that morning, and he said, hey, do you mind if our trafficking team sits in on what you're going to talk about, your presentation? I said, what does drug trafficking have to do with covering tattoos? And he got real silent. He said, no, this is human trafficking. And I remember exactly what I said. I just said, you know, please God, tell me that doesn't happen here. I had no idea. You know, every once in a while we'll see someone on the news getting arrested at O'Hare trying to fly to Thailand or something like that. Or we'll hear about it being in Thailand or Southeast Asia, Vietnam. I certainly had no idea this was happening in the United States. So I finished my presentation and I asked them, I said, can you please give me an education on this human trafficking? And it's like my grandmother always used to tell me, you know, be careful what you ask for because you'll get it full force. And I did. I got an education that day that changed my life. They started telling me some of the stats and figures, and they said that national figures. There's an estimated 250,000 to 300,000 American teenagers being sold on our streets for sex right now.
Yeah.
And I sat back in my chair and I was blown away. I could not believe that. And I said, you know, they kept telling me different facts and figures, and you know, the 80% of these folks that are involved are runaways and different figures. And I said, well, what do the tattoos have to do with anything? And they started showing me pictures, and they laid out a bunch of pictures on this big boardroom table we're sitting at, and they were of barcodes, a lot of them. And I looked at it and I said, well, from my warehousing background, I'm very familiar with barcodes and barcode technology. And I said, I know that signifies product, and it's how you differentiate product from other products. And I said, what is this? I said, well, they use these as markers of human trafficking. And I looked at it and I said, well, that's not a scannable barcode. I know that from my experience in the past. And they said, no, they're not scannable. But the way they use them is there are a series of numbers and or letters below the tattoo. Those numbers and letters are tied to a pimp in an underground network.
Oh my gosh.
So for example, if
I've never heard this.
It blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. If a pimp in Chicago sees a young woman on the street with a barcode tattoo, typically they're in high visibility areas, the side of the neck, the back of the neck, or the top of the wrist. They will approach them.
Do they purposely put them in visible places so that they can be seen like that?
Exactly. They want them to be visible.
And so this person who gets the barcode, are they forced? Do they give in because it's like, yeah, I'm a runaway, and so I've submitted to this lifestyle? I mean, how do they even acquire this barcode?
Most of the stories that I've been told by clients is that they were drugged at the time.
Wow.
So they weren't even conscious when this happened. These aren't typically tattoos that are happening in tattoo shops.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the tattoo supply industry has been inundated by groups in other countries like that will go onto websites and sell tattoo kits for $100.
That can be dangerous.
Very dangerous. Yeah, in so many ways.
Yeah. Wow.
So many ways. And so they'll have some guy or some gang member or one of their buddies tattoo these victims. So I started looking at it, and at first they were just showing me the pictures of the tattoos close up. And you know, we saw other symbols, gang symbols, because gangs run a lot of the trafficking operations on the local level in the big cities, and like pimps' names and things like that. And
so is every barcode different?
Yeah.
So let's say there's these 250,000, like you said, teenagers out there that are being trafficked.
Right.
Each one of them would potentially have a different barcode.
Yes.
And somebody has a log somewhere with this barcode in that ties that person to a pimp somewhere.
Yeah, they use underground websites to track each other. And now, that's not to say that every victim of trafficking has a tattoo, and certainly they're not all barcodes. It's just some samples. But after they showed me the close-ups of these tattoos, then they started showing me some pictures of these young people, the victims, and I started crying because I have a 14-year-old daughter at home.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like I was looking at my daughter. You know, these aren't kids who are kidnapped in Asia and sent here. These are kids, these are American kids.
Yeah.
You know, and not that that makes any difference.
No, that's right.
But it just makes
a child.
Yeah, it really brought it home to me because they all look like my daughter. And then at the end of this, they asked me, you know, would you be willing to help these people out by covering these or removing these tattoos? I was like, how do I say no? Of course, I'd be willing to help. Absolutely.
So how does that work then?
So we work with different law enforcement groups. We work with state, local, and federal authorities. Attorneys, state's attorneys, to get referrals. So that's how we come into contact with the trafficking victims.
Okay.
The gang side of Ink180, it's all the same way. You know, we're networked really well with law enforcement. They love what we do. It's a free service, so the
and
government loves
it's word of mouth too, so
Yeah.
it could be anyone. And when they contact you, do they contact you like via your website? Because I know we put your website up. But is that how they normally contact you?
Yeah, we have our emails also on the website, the
Okay.
phone number, so it's a
Okay.
variety of means. And
Okay.
you know, I speak at churches regularly, and I'll almost always have somebody that kind of similar story to me. You know, God saved their life,
Right,
and
right, and they
they're
wanna
going to
get
church,
rid of
and they're
it.
like, "Man, I've been out of the gang for 15 years, but I
Yeah.
can't take my kids to the pool because if I take my shirt off, I got this crown
Right.
tattoo." And so it's a
Right.
lot of word of mouth. And I mean,
Right.
I've had clients that were they were in the gang. They're like second and third generation gang members and their families, you know. And even I've had people as old as 76 with gang tattoos.
Goodness.
Yeah, old Klan tattoos that they
Wow.
wanted gone. And
Wow. But now the human trafficking works a little bit differently. How
Yeah.
does that work?
so the human trafficking side, you know, the law in Illinois is you have to be 18 to have a tattoo, to tattoo someone.
Right, right.
And I follow the rules exactly. So if we have someone who is underage, we will go to a judge who will sign a letter for us, basically releasing us of any liability, saying yes, it's okay to cover or remove this tattoo.
So you don't need parental consent or anything. Well, in some of
No.
these cases, there isn't a parent to even
a
do
lot
that.
a lot of these cases, the parents were the ones that were involved in
Oh.
introducing them to trafficking.
Oh, what a travesty! Wow.
Yeah, I stopped saying the phrase, "It couldn't possibly get any worse, could it?" Because every time I did, it got worse.
Wow.
I've heard everything from a young woman who was from Northern California, from Oakland, whose parents were both incarcerated for drug trafficking. So she was sent to live with her grandmother, who was a crack addict, who sold her into trafficking to cover a $75 crack cocaine debt.
Oh no.
She was trafficked for 4 years in 12 cities across the U.S. before she was rescued.
This is like something you think you see on Law and Order, and you go, "Oh, it's a TV show,
Right.
Special Victims or Criminal Intent or something," and you don't ever think that you could see anything like that in real life, and it's right here
Yeah,
in our back door.
It is, and it's everywhere. People think, you know, when they hear about this, they think, okay, that's awful, it happens here, it's awful, it happens anywhere, but it must just be like up in the city, right? And no, it's
everywhere.
everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's on websites, you know. Certain websites promote this as escort services, and they think it's okay because
The
it's
massage parlors,
right.
and yeah.
So it's a brutal reality. And you know, in addition to the tattoo work that we do, we speak at a lot of human trafficking events, and we're just trying to get the word out there and educate as many people as we can to what human trafficking looks like, how it can be fought, how it can be prevented. And, you know, I speak in high schools to
Right.
teach kids what to look for when they're hanging out at the mall, because
Right.
these guys are predators. They know exactly how to prey on young people and what to say. It's brutal. And you know, one of the things that happened recently that we're really excited about is there's a group of us that all kind of work together. I work a lot with Traffic Free, is a great organization here in Chicago, and CASE, another great organization here in Chicago. And we were talking, some of the guys, you know, it's a lot of the time we're seeing it's women that run these organizations, because women are typically the victims of trafficking. There are men involved and boys involved, but predominantly it's women. And women get into it, you know, they want to fight it. They're the victims, so they want to fight this. And,
Sure.
it's kind of different being a man that's saying, you know, we got to stop this stuff. And we would look out into the crowds in these events that we were speaking at, and it was 95+% women in the crowd. And a few of us guys were sitting around, we're like, you know, we need to educate our men and our boys and teens about this, because you know, a lot of kids, you know, teens are exposed to pornography, and it's like drugs. It's a gateway to different things down the road. And you know, we've set out to host men-only events.
Yeah, or
to
even
educate.
dating violence.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
all of that.
So we just had our first men-only event here in Chicago a few weeks ago. We're getting ready to host our second one, and we're going to try and do one every couple of months.
So what was that like? What was the first one like?
I'll tell you, it was interesting. It was a panel made up of myself, Greg Amadon from Traffic Free, Case was there, and we had a officer, Bill Lean from the Cook County Human Trafficking Task Force, on a panel speaking about it, and we all kind of told our different perspectives.
Where did you guys do this?
It was at a recording studio here in Chicago, in the West Loop, and it was
like
a free
a
event.
Webinar, or
no, it was a free event.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people came in. We had about 100 guys there for the first one, which was like, this is great for the first one. And these guys had no idea what trafficking was. They were me before that Homeland Security meeting, and I had guys sitting there with their jaws dropped open, and young guys, older guys, everything in between, and we spent just as much time talking one-on-one with folks after the presentation that we did during the presentation. We really opened some eyes, and it was exciting to see, hey, this is a really good way for us to make a bigger impact. It's like, you know, let's cut off the demand for this garbage.
Yes.
You know, it's like anything else. If there's no demand, there's no need to have the supply.
Yeah.
So.
And it's so powerful when men are speaking, when it's really a woman's, when a woman is really the victim,
right?
Or you're saying that most of these are women. We know that we have like some of our males, our men in there too, or young boys, and
right.
But it's so powerful when you have the men taking a stance, and you know, because that's, you know, the voice that you're not necessarily expecting to hear. So when you do hear it, it's powerful, I think.
Yeah, it just, you know, as I sit with these victims of trafficking and I'm taking care of the tattoos for them, it disgusts me as a man to know that another man did this to this young person, you know? And
so talk a little bit more about that, the human trafficking, which is different than the gang sign removal. So these are mostly referrals.
Yeah, always referrals.
And then you have to go through getting this permission to be able to remove because of the age limitation or age restriction. And then what? Like what? So they just come to you. Do you have a shop now?
Yeah, we just opened our first facility. I'd been renting space out of different facilities, and it's interesting as a Christian artist now. Things that in my former part of my life I was okay with and didn't bother me. You know, you go into some shops, not all, but some shops, and there's profane music going and almost pornography going on the TVs and the discussions.
So you just want like your own space.
Yeah, you know, and I know I've been collecting tattoos since my 18th birthday, and there's shops that I won't walk into. I don't know. So I can't imagine what it's like for someone who's trying to get their first tattoo. And that's just the environment we've tried to put together at Ink180 is one of a comforting, welcoming environment for that's, you know, world class as far as cleanliness and the work we do, and welcoming. So if someone's getting their first tattoo and they're 50 years old and they're like, oh, it's kind of scary, I don't know what to expect, they're going to walk in, they're going to feel comfortable, and they're going to tell their friends that they had a good experience and it was positive.
Are you doing more removals than you are doing actual tattoos, or is it kind of the same? Or?
It's we're trying to play catch up a little bit because I broke my wrist 2 months ago.
Oh, okay.
So I spent the last couple of months letting my wrist heal up and also building a shop at the same time, so we'd built a bit of a backlog. So we're at about 70% of the nonprofit Ink180 work and about 30% of our regular tattoo business to pay the bills.
Well, that's good though, that you have that other side of the business, right?
It's very important.
So this, just thinking about the human trafficking again, and so you're sitting there with this young victim, and mostly females, removing a barcode.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing this, whether it's the human trafficking or whether it's the gang sign removal, like what is that like? Like what is the interaction like? I mean, are you just removing it? Are you guys talking? You know, are they sharing anything with you? What's it like?
This is probably one of the best parts about Ink180 and what I get to do and what I'm blessed to be able to do. I have a captive audience for 1 to 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours if I'm covering a tattoo. And I never, on the gang side, I'll ask them anything because they want to get it out.
Yeah.
They really do. On the human trafficking side, I never ask any questions because it's cruel. Just the things they've been forced to live through, I would never ask.
Yeah, yeah.
However, being a tattoo artist is kind of like being an amateur therapist. Once people feel comfortable with you after a little bit.
Like going to the salon and getting your hair done or your nails or whatever.
Yeah. So it's a lot of that. And they want to tell their story. They want to get it out and help, start that healing process within their hearts. And it's I'll tell you, it's hard, but I get to minister to them, and I've learned through my own counseling with my wife of how to become an active listener and really listen for what's their pain, what's hurting in their life. And we give everyone Bibles. If they don't have one, we give them a Bible when we're done, and I flag verses out, and I tell them, look, when I struggled with this in my life, I read this and it really seemed to help me. Maybe it'll help you.
Yeah.
I don't preach it down.
Right.
It's
absolutely.
Just, I like to share my experience and kind of try to relate it to what they might be going through.
Yeah.
And they really are open to that. They really love that. And it's like, for the first time in a long time, somebody's actually caring about them. So it's fantastic, and it's great for me too. I mean, just to see how God is working in the hearts of so many of these people, it just renews my faith and my strength and my will to keep pressing on with this.
Are you doing this full time right now?
Yeah, I am now.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love it. It was always part-time before, and now God's found a way to make it a full-time job for me, and
that's
it's just
amazing.
been a huge blessing. I love doing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So talk about some of the, can you share about like some of the stories that have impacted you the most?
Yeah, absolutely. One jumps to mind right away.
Okay.
A young woman named Nicole. In fact, I was sitting in a church meeting, a weekly recap from our church service, about 3 weeks before Christmas, and I had my Facebook open, and Brian Smith from Homeland Security sent me a link to a story in the Times. I was reading it, and there's a Alex Campbell case. He was a pimp here in Chicago who was tried, and he was convicted and given life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I was reading the story, and the judge was quoted in the story as saying, "I'm giving you life in prison because of the heinous nature of your crimes, but more importantly for the way that you've branded these young women with tattoos." And they're going to have to look at that every day for the rest of their lives and be reminded constantly, and having people ask them what it is. And so I'm giving you life in prison. I'm reading this, and I'm like, okay, life in prison, okay. I'm not a judge. You impose your sentence, cool. But I can help these young women.
Yeah.
And so I reached back out to Brian. I said, you have to put me in contact somehow. The judge, the state's attorney. About 10 minutes later, the U.S. State's Attorney's Office called me and said, hey, we have the first of the victims from the Campbell case that would love to have her tattoo removed.
Oh my gosh.
It was awesome because I got that call. It was on a Thursday, I believe. And we set it up for me to drive to where she's now living, which is about 5 hours away, the following Monday. So I went into church on Sunday. I speak at my church, Big Life Community Church, every week, kind of give updates on what we're doing and things like that. And I said, hey, I'm going to work with a young woman. She was just rescued out of trafficking. She has 3 kids out of trafficking. And she's struggling. She's working 2 jobs. She's going to school full time to better herself. And she has a church family where she's living that's really embraced her, and she's given her life to Christ, and she's on a great path, and she's a phenomenal young woman. And I said, I'd like to bless her if we can. She's got 3 kids.
Yeah.
It's Christmas time. People were so giving, and we were able to give her a really sizable gift card to help her and her family have a great Christmas. But I drove up there that Monday in a really bad storm and took care of the first session of her tattoo removal, and got to know her a little bit, and her kids and some of her church family. And one of the coolest things that she told me, every time I work with someone, they tell me not only what they went through, but what they want to do to help others avoid or to heal from the same situations.
Yes.
And Nicole is doing something phenomenal in her state where she's living now. They're developing what's called John School. They actually just completed it. So it's a similar program to, say, if someone got a DUI, where you pay your fines and you go to classes. And it's an 8-week program for anyone that's arrested for soliciting prostitution to go through to learn about different things related to prostitution. And I was amazed as she's telling me this. I'm like, that is that's a great idea.
Oh my
That's powerful.
gosh.
And she got this really great smile on her face, and I was like, what? And she's like, I'm teaching the class.
Oh my gosh.
So
wow.
so not only did she help develop this program with
Wow.
law enforcement, she's going to teach the class, and these people that are forced to go through this class because of the crimes they've committed are going to come face to face with someone who lived that hell.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's powerful.
yeah, and I'm going, when they do the first session, I'm going to go up there for a couple of the sessions just because I want to observe and see what it's like.
Yeah.
Because it will be immensely powerful.
That's such a great story, Chris. I think again, I said this earlier, and I'm, saying this to our audience too, that, we all have these talents and gifts, and who would ever think, that God would do this like tattoo removing ministry. Like somebody would think, removing a tattoo, wow, but nobody would ever put it in the context of a human trafficking barcode
Right.
or some gang symbol, both which that have horrible stigmas attached to them, and can really keep somebody in bondage, like the guy who wants to go to the pool with his kids but won't take his shirt off, right?
Right.
Or this person who has been this victim, who could be scoped out by a pimp because they still have a barcode. I mean, what a powerful ministry.
And it's all God. I give all the glory to God.
Yeah.
Because really all I did was call out to him and say, use me. And I got it. And he blessed me with this ministry. And it is so cool to be able to go out and share that at churches. And that's what I do. I always close out my speaking engagements with saying to people, don't leave here saying, wow, Chris is a really good guy, isn't he? That's so cool what he does. I want them to leave that event and drive home and talk to their family and their friends and say, wow, what can I do? I'm an accountant. What can I do? I'm not a tattoo artist. What can I do?
Yes.
We've all received fabulous gifts from God, and it's all part of his plan for our lives. And all we need to do is ask him how to use those,
Yes.
and he'll tell us. And we just need to follow through with it.
Yeah, what a great segue into this next part here, where you're going to actually get to see Chris in action in his shop. Stay tuned.